Okay, in 2019 in Tokyo, a friend of mine who was part of this interesting experience told me this that a certain American lifter who should not have tried to fit in a shirt that was, I believe, either a 42 or 44. It took something like 40 minutes with two very large American benchers, one of whom has already been mentioned here, and the other whom I know is possibly a future guest on this podcast, wrestling him into this shirt. And somehow he managed to go out and not bomb.
Names in my head as to who this might have been.
I'll text you when the call is over.
Can you give initials?
Was so RC and JS were wrestling QM into the shirt. I think now that I've said those names, I think you can figure this out pretty quickly. Yeah, yeah. And I want to be very clear here. I'm not taking anything away from any of these three guys. If I could fit in a shirt like that, I would 100% do that. Yeah. If I could arch like Eddie Berglund used to be able to, you better believe I do that. And I got a pretty good arch.
Yeah, dude. I feel so bad for Eddie and the hate that he copped online for having a great bench, because dude couldn't deadlift. He wasn't winning. He was a 3-lift powerlifter with a good squat and an amazing bench. And because of the advantage in the bench press, he was terrible at deadlifting. It was such a disadvantage on.
I guess that we'll get a little bit sidetracked, but what the hell? I'm sympathetic to the intent of the bench depth rule. I think the way that they've gone about it, I think the way IPF has gone about officiating it and determining everything around it is not great. But I do like the idea. And I think that the set of rules are actually not bad rules. The problem is I have seen that rule implemented and enforced in ways that I would consider very unfair against certain lifters while not being called against others.
Yeah. It does seem the IPF will make fairly political rules every few years to be targeting with the rule.
But at the same time, you have a pretty sizable contingent of, let's be honest, lightweight female lifters, and in some cases lightweight men, who carry the bar extremely low on their back in the squat, and that's perfectly legal. And I think if you want to criticize range of motion for bench, you should at the same time say you have to carry the bar, here or higher.
Well, we used to have that rule about how far below and that was it as one from the top of the shoulder, and it's really hard to tell where the top is sometimes, and what's low and what's now the rule. I believe is forward length, very, very gray.
The sternum rule, but somehow even worse.
Oh gosh, I love that sternum rule. If anybody wasn't around for it, we had to touch. So there's my xiphoid process right about there, base of the sternum. You had to touch higher than that. But the problem being is most people would often think the middle of your sternum is the bottom of your sternum. No, it's actually along nipples for a while.
So how would you touch in a properly fitting shirt?
Well, I became one of the guys that was great at touching like high. I think is high. I just learned the technique to do it. Played around with the way the shirt loaded up, sort of changing it down, pulling it up, pushing to the armpits, stuff like that. There were ways to do it. And I think they threw it out after 1 year at Worlds, like almost everyone bombed. It's like, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. This is dumb. So I always say hi to Ricky Flanders. Ricky was refereeing one day, and I got red lights for touching too low in a bench shirt. And I just sat up off the bench, and I looked straight at Ricky, and I go, "Can you point at my sternum, please?" Because man, I was 170 kilos in a bench press shirt. Like somewhere around here, like, I just said, can you point at it for me? And it did sound, in hindsight, it did sound very aggressive. Man was angry and was yelling at the nice the chair. But that was